Hello, demystifying Dev Pod listeners. We're your hosts,
Zoya.
and Haneen.
Welcome to our third episode with a very special guest.
Zaeem.
Okay, we'll give you a proper introduction in a second. All right. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Zaeem. I'm in third year. I'm from Pakistan and I've been here for almost 4 years now.
Yeah. Okay, so how did you find the university and why did you choose it?
I found the university through this organization called Qadri International. They're based in Dubai and they help you, it's kind of like Eduscope. You'll have heard students talking about Eduscope. And they basically put me in touch. They told me an opportunity of the entrance exam for this university. And I wrote the entrance exam before I knew what this university was. And then I looked it up and I thought it was a really good place. So I decided to come here.
Yeah, okay.
So today's episode's topic is about apartment hunting. So Zaeem,
Yeah.
tell us more about that because I know that you've changed a bit
Okay, all right.
apartments.
So
here.
I'll tell you what it was like when I first came here, and like the different places I've lived and like what I think.
Okay.
When I first came here, my family came to drop me off, and we all lived in Augusta for 2 weeks.
It was before COVID.
Yeah. Are you busy, Zoe?
Sorry, my phone rang.
That was a joke, by the way.
Yeah, go on.
No, we lived in Augusta. This is my honest opinion.
Mhm.
I hate Augusta.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
So me and my family, we lived there for about a week and a half while I was looking for apartments. I'd already been looking for places before I came to Debrecen. Like I was in contact with some of the Facebook real estate agents and things like that. And where I ended up living was Najila Laoshkirali Terra 5. Most people know that as the small spar building.
You really just said your whole address, huh?
Fam, that was just the name of the building.
Oh, okay. Well,
I can give you the door code if you want. No. So that was the first place I lived, right? Finding the place was pretty pleasant. Like there was the real estate agent who was super helpful. We saw a few different apartments, and
So where did you find the real estate agent? How did you?
Facebook, homie, just casually like all those Facebook groups that home listings in Debrecen, apartment listings in Debrecen. That's how I didn't know about things like Great Forest or anything like that beforehand. That's how I would find things. So that's what I used, and it worked out well for the start. And I lived there for a year. It was a nice place. Like it was a good location. And I think at the time what I liked about it was that I could see the university because I get lost like crazy easily. So I could look down the street and see main building. So I was like, okay, I can't get lost in a straight line, right? So that's why I lived there.
Yeah.
And then that was it, basically. And and then I had to move out of that place. And I've lived in 1, 2, 3 different apartments since then. So 4 in total.
But how did you find these apartments?
And how was
was
your
it-
experience with the landlords?
Yeah. Oh, was it always research? Sorry.
Okay, wait. I'll talk about landlords first, right?
Yeah.
So my first landlord, very sweet. They were nice people. Like generally speaking, I really liked it. Like they'd show up once a week. Not once a week, but once a month to collect rent in cash and stuff like this, all pre-COVID. And they didn't speak much English. But they were still good vibes. Like they would I remember for this one Hungarian holiday, she brought me a sweet and things like that. And when I told her I was learning Hungarian, she was like, oh, can I see your book and all these things? Generally very nice people. I messed up with that apartment because I didn't know that you're supposed to leave the window open when you shower so the steam goes somewhere. Because this is my first time living alone. And generally speaking, when you're with your family, things kind of just take care of themselves.
Yeah.
So I was surprised when I was like, oh, I have a mold problem
Oh.
in the bathroom.
Oh,
'Cause
no.
Because you didn't think that humidity would actually lead to things.
I wouldn't think that either.
Yeah, you just go okay, it's just kind of hot in here, and then it'll go away in a few hours.
Oh, no.
And then the day I was supposed to move out, right? I actually just cleaned out my stuff and just left the apartment. I thought it was fine. But then they called me back and they're like, what happened to the bathroom? I was like, what? And I came back and we looked at the apartment. We looked at the bathroom and they're like, what's all the mold about? And I was like, I don't know. And then that was when they started explaining it to me how much of a problem this was. It was a couple. It was an old couple that came to see me, right? Like their children were adults already. But so the lady was trying to be very nice and gentle towards me, like this is really not good. And the dad was pissed. You know what I mean? He was like,
Did they take all your deposit?
no. But this is what I think a lot of like new people who come into Debrecen should like pay attention to. Don't be afraid to like negotiate, because you can negotiate, like especially like when you're like you come here like 17, 18, and you've just been listening to your elders your whole life, your parents and your teachers. You don't get the idea that you can actually negotiate with people, right? And so the dad goes to me like, we're going to need to take a lot of money from your deposit to like repaint the whole house. And I was like, what do you need to repaint the whole house for? You need to repaint the bathroom. You know what I mean? Things like this, like, and through this negotiation, they obviously did take some money, and they should have, because I did destroy their bathroom walls.
Also, something that also happened to me was when I moved into my first ever apartment. The wall had some like kind of chips on it.
Yeah.
But I thought that they knew, or like I assumed that they were like decent enough to know that they have the chip on the wall.
No, you have to take
Okay?
pictures of them. Yeah.
But apparently you have to take pictures of it the first day and tell them this was there before you moved in. Because when I got to move in, they were like, oh, you have chips on the wall. And I'm like, these were there before I came. They're like, no, you must have done that. You had sticky notes. And I like showed them my sticky notes. I told them these sticky notes don't like take paint off the wall.
Right.
And then they were like just mad, and they weren't negotiating. And then they were like, we need to deduct this amount to paint this wall.
I think this is a good time to have a nice yap session about how terrible landlord can be in Debrecen.
Yeah, we'll do that in the next segment. But before that, I want to say, like, for all you people moving in Debrecen, like, something that you should do as a backup. Like, you don't need to do this, but it's always good to do this. When you move into an apartment, just make a list for yourself of all the things that are in that apartment.
And take pictures of every single thing that you find off.
Take a video.
Apartment. Yeah, take a whole video.
Yeah, because like if you have even like one plate out of place, like people
And pro
will
tip,
argue.
if you break something, just take a picture of it and put it at the same date as when you moved in.
If you break something, you can also take a picture of it and replace it.
Yes, I broke a lamp. One of the lamps that I broke is available in what was that place?
Practiker?
Yeah, Practiker. It was available in Practiker, but on the checklist that they give you, it costed like 20K. That like I should pay them if I broke that lamp. But when I went to Practiker, it was like 8K. And I just did that and I replaced it, and they had no clue that I did that.
Oh, you mean like at a hotel when you buy something from the mini bar and then you replace it?
Exactly, you replace
Big brain.
it. So like,
I mean, I destroyed a whole bathroom. I can't replace that.
Just keep that in mind.
so everybody here kind of has landlord problems, and that's what we're gonna talk about.
Yeah. One of the things is like I feel like I'm not obviously I'm making up these numbers, but I feel like the majority, like maybe 80% of students or 90% of students live in apartments as opposed to dorms, right?
I mean, that's a big number to just come up with.
Yeah, I'm just making
just a lot of people live in the apartments.
Or like the ratio of people that I meet, I'm like if I meet 10 people, like one of them will be living in a dorm and the other 9 will be living in a apartment.
Yeah, as for international students, that's definitely the case. Yeah.
But yeah, so a lot of people have landlord problems. Have you had any landlord problems, Zaeem?
Have I had any landlord problems? It's not even just about my landlord problems. It's about the worst ones I've ever heard. You know what I mean? Like I've had, okay, let me go through some landlord issues that I've had. I've had mostly good landlords. Like I've lived in 4 different places. 3 out of 4 of those places, good landlords, like nice people, right? In some cases, like I'll be like, okay, this some person is trying their very best to collect my deposit after I move out. Or find arbitrary reasons, things like that. To be honest, this is things that you can find even with good landlords. Like this is something that you should be wary of in most cases. I remember having one landlord who would kind of just show up at the house unannounced.
No.
And just like kind of walk in. And the problem is there was a big language barrier as well. The crazy thing is she was also a sweet old lady. But old people, they don't always know how to interact or just exist sometimes. You know what I mean? So this my old landowner, she, well, I'll put it this way: we had two noise complaints, and by the second one, she was like, "Get out." She said, "Get out of the apartment." And me and my roommates have been living here for 2 weeks at this point. 2 weeks. She was like, "Get out." She was just not feeling it. You know what I mean?
Okay, wait, no, but let me ask you something. Like, do you think that there was an element of racism involved in this?
No.
Okay.
I mean, at the time, we were thinking like, oh, could this be something about race? Because she did send an email. She said something like, you know, it's just not working out. You guys are not my type of people. And at the time, we were like, oh, what does that mean? But then very clearly, we figured out what she meant was noisy people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
What does that?
because we were noisy.
Okay.
She was not. She just was like, you guys are just way too noisy for me. And this was the second noise complaint, right? So we're like, okay, this is a bit much. Like, this is way too harsh. That issue was resolved pretty easily because we just went to the people making the noise. We're like, we're so sorry. We didn't mean to make noise. We didn't mean to be so noisy. And they were like, oh, it's fine. It's cool. And then we were like, yeah, so our landlord wants to kick us out. And they were like, oh my God, we did not mean for that to happen. And they just, spoke to her, and then everything was calm. And then she was actually a very nice landlord for the rest of the time that we knew her. And but that's my worst issue, right? There were times where she would just show up unannounced, but that was not a big problem. Some of the worst stories I've heard, though, I'll put it this, let me tell you guys a story. I went to my friend's house, right? This was in first year. This was also their first apartment. And I walked into the apartment, and we just started talking for 5 minutes. And then we hear a knock on the door. And they go, Zaeem, get in the bathroom. I'm like, homie, what? What do you mean? Like, what? They're like, you need to hide. No, that was the second judge. The first one was like saying, jump out of the balcony. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. What do you mean, jump? I thought it was a joke at first. I was like, haha. They're like, no, really. I was like, we're on the second floor.
What?
They're like, you'll survive, probably. I'm like, no, I won't. And either way, I don't want to do that when there's a door and a staircase. You know what I mean? But anyways, I end up hiding in the bathroom. And the reason was that their landlord was so strict that they had said no guests allowed. And they lived in the same building. So they saw a brown person, an international looking person, walk into the building, and they were like, this is not right. So a few minutes after I was there, the guy her landlord knocked on the door. She opened the door, and he walked straight in. He just walked into the apartment. There's no one, just walked in, and he was like, there's a guest here. And she was like, no, there's not. And oh, by the way, she said there were 4 people at the apartment. There was the girl who opened the door, and there was me and 2 other guests, right? Her roommate was one of those 4 people. So she opens the door. Me, her roommate, and the other one of us was all hiding in the bathroom. Because the guy was like, no guests, right? So, and when we were hiding there, she had turned on the tap to make it sound like she was taking a bath. Now, this is crazy. You don't need to hide from your landlord this much. You know what I mean?
Like, most people, I wouldn't hide from my mom.
Yeah, you wouldn't hide from your mom this much, dude. And anyways, this guy's like lurking through the apartment like, I know I heard something. And she's like, no. And then after he doesn't find anything, because obviously he's not going to go into the bathroom where their girl's taking a bath. I say obviously, but like, we were nervous. And he left, right? And then we all come out and we're like, what was that about, right? And then I think those guys moved out of that apartment before their contract even ended, right? Because that is an example of a terrible landlord.
Yeah, it's a really strange landlord.
And this is something that you have to kind of suss out when you meet the landlords. Yeah. It's very important to meet landlords, by the way, and check Facebook groups like Blacklisted in Debrecen, so you can see how other people's experiences were living in particular apartments. And if there's a certain, just go to that Facebook group and you'll see the worst stories you can see from landlords. Like, this was nothing compared to some of the stories I've read on that group. Like, you have to be very careful about things like that. But generally speaking, other landlords I've had were pretty nice. I remember, I actually, like you mentioned, like how like there was a chip on your wall. I actually did chip my wall. And like recently after it happened, I brought in the landlord. I was like, I'm sorry, I accidentally chipped this wall. How much will it cost? He's like, don't worry about it. It's a chip. Like, it was like nothing. I was like, that's very nice of him. And he actually did like mean it. Because I thought he was just saying it just so he could just spank me later just with 20,000 forints, but that's how much it's gonna cost you. I'm like, I thought you said it's cool. He's like, when did I say that?
Your current apartment?
No. This was 2 apartments ago, right? So yeah.
What about you, Hadeen? Any landlord problems?
I love my landlord. She's a very decent person.
Then why doesn't she let you sit on the couch?
She's just like a bit OCD, and she has rules about like living in the house. One of those rules is that I can't sit freely on the couch. I can't sleep freely on the couch. Basically, I have to cover the couch with something before I sit on it. And like every time she comes, she's like, "Oh, you put something on top of the couch before you sit down, right?" I was like, "Yeah." I'm actually scared to sit on my own couch, guys.
Oh no.
But one good thing about her though is that she's like a very decent person, and she doesn't ask for like extra stuff, and she doesn't get much in your business as long as it doesn't have to do with her apartment.
Do you think like you prefer this apartment or this landlord to your previous landlord?
I liked my previous landlord more because like I was free to do whatever I wanted in the apartment. It was just about like the wall chip thing at the end of the contract, where like my deposit was like less than I expected.
I just remember this one time I came home to one of my the apartment before the one I'm living in now, where I mentioned this landowner who was very unhappy with the noise complaints, right? And one day I just walked in and I see a bucket full of water like near the ground of one of the closets. I was like, "Oh, what's this about?" And I checked my email, and like a few hours after I noticed this, my landowner email was like, "Oh yeah, I was in the house." And like I just had to check something. No pre-warning or anything. Just she said, and like I said, sweet old lady. She was just being nice. She was like, "Yeah, I was in there and I left this bucket there." And the whole time I was thinking, like, what do you mean you were just here, bro? Like, what? That's not right.
I have a friend that was also experiencing the same problem with a nosy landlord. Basically, she would walk in at any time without sending any emails, without sending any notice. And once he was like actually in the apartment taking a shower, he comes out of the shower and there's like an old lady in front of him, and that's the landlord. And he's like, "What?" Like he's just so confused and like.
Was this friend me? Because it happened to me as well.
No.
But she wasn't in the apartment. Oh no, she was. She walked into the apartment. That's what I heard. I heard someone walk into the apartment speaking Hungarian, and I was like, I need to get out of the shower. And she was real nice at the time.
And for some reason, like the door, like usually back home, my parents put the key in the door so that people won't be able to come into the house. But it doesn't work here. I don't know how they do it. What kind of technology they put into the doors?
This is why I love my door having a sliding bar lock, because there is no way anybody's getting in without me wanting them.
Your apartment looks like it was designed to be a prison.
What do you mean?
The lock it looks like from like 1948.
Yeah, I mean, this is a communist era building, and this is a sort of like.
We're talking about communism now.
Yeah, we're talking about communism. No, but it shows. Like, if you see, like, I have gas heaters. I don't have central heating. Like this.
It's an old building.
You can just tell by looking. Like, they've renovated it, but I feel like you can.
What about? But like you mentioned, like you're happy with the lock, but like what about your landowner? Because you've lived in the same apartment for years.
I have lived in the same apartment for almost 5 years. So I really don't have any experience when it comes to this, because my landlords have been so nice to me. I have actually troubled them way more than they have troubled me. Like, and when I first moved into this apartment, I didn't know how to do anything, and so I would be texting them a lot, be like, "How do I? How do I do this?"
Your landlords don't speak English, but their daughter speaks English.
Their daughter does, but now what's happened over the last couple of years is that I think both of us have gotten better. So like, because they're very nice about fixing stuff. So last time I asked my landlord to come and fix something, it was that flood over there. And he came, and I like spoke to him a little bit in Hungarian, and I was like, wait, my Hungarian has really like improved. And then he spoke to me a little bit in English, and I was like, oh. But yeah, mostly I speak to their daughter, which I feel like is like it's kind of a standard experience. Quite a few people have this thing where they don't communicate directly with their landlord, but their landlord's kid or whoever can speak English. And definitely I have troubled her a lot. Like I've locked myself out of this apartment. I've like done all these things. They've been very nice to me. Thank God for that.
You're lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I feel like.
Have you ever heard any like nice stories about other people's landlords?
Yeah, I mean, one of our mutual friends had a really great experience in an academic group apartment, and she like wants to move back there. Actually, there are
that's very rare to hear. Like, I want to move back to that nice apartment. You know what I mean?
I think it's because like sometimes you move, you're thinking like, okay, I'm gonna find like a better rent, or like I'm gonna live with some roommates or something, and then you're like, oh, maybe I want to like go back. And I will say like living. We'll talk about this more in like in another part of this, but I really like living alone in like a single person apartment. And by next segment, I mentioned now we're going to talk a little bit about living by yourself versus with roommates. Now, Haneen and I have only ever lived by ourselves, so Zaeem's going to have to fill in the gap on the roommates, because I have heard a lot of roommate horror stories, and I've heard like way more roommate horror stories than roommate happy stories. You know what I mean?
I mean, I haven't had horror stories. Like, I've lived with 2 roommates at once, so like me and 2 other guys. It's not been horror. I mean, okay, this is what I'll say. It's been nice. They're not horror stories or anything like that. But if you're going to be the type of person to have roommates, you can't be weak. You know what I mean? Like
Sorry.
You also have to make sure they're not Islamophobic.
Yeah.
In that case.
Oh, in the case.
No. But what I'm saying is, like, when you have roommates, you sometimes you'll end up being roommates with like a nice friend of yours. Like, you'll make friends with someone. You're like, okay, next year we'll move in. Or sometimes you'll be like, you'll meet someone casually, and you'll be like, y'all want to be roommates? And both of these things have happened to me. I've literally made friends with someone like next year, like, let's get a 2-bedroom apartment, and that was nice. And then one time I was like, I don't know where I'm going to live. And then casually I met people who were like, yeah, we're looking for a 2-3 bedroom apartment, but we don't know who we're going to move with. This was my first interaction with people who then
became your roommates.
Became my roommates from like the 3rd meeting onwards.
Then what's the then what do you think is the strategy for avoiding like meeting like people you're not going to get along with?
I mean, well, first of all, it's about a vibe, right? I mean, you can tell pretty soon on, like, if you can talk to someone and, just be frank with them, then it's not going to be very, like, you can like them at like the first, you can have a conversation with them.
Sometimes it's hard to tell from the first 3 meetings. Like, sometimes you meet a friend and you're like, oh my god, this friend is awesome. I think we're going to have so much fun living together. Then you live together and you're like, oh my god. And this friendship could even break sometimes.
Yeah, but it doesn't even have to be like, it doesn't even have to be like they're like bad people or whatever. Like, I know a specific case of like 2 people who were living together, and one of them kept on bringing over their significant other, even though the other person was like, the other girl was like, I'm not super comfortable with this.
Also about the habits.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also,
Now
I was like sitting in a tram stop, and this woman sitting right next to me, she was like talking in Arabic, and she was like talking so bad about her roommate, and she didn't know that I was like, I understood. Yeah, I understood Arabic. Then like she started talking about how unclean she is and how she leaves like how she leaves the top of like the kitchen countertops with like spices all over it yet, and she doesn't clean after herself. Like the countertops are so sticky. Has her parents not taught her how to clean back home?
Oh, just
and,
like
I was just like hearing all of that, and then I just like I couldn't stop myself from laughing. And then she just started laughing with me. She's like, "You understand?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yes."
Dude, no, I had this experience in a coffee shop in Debrecen where I was like sitting there, and this girl was like absolutely ranting about her roommate was being properly toxic. Her roommate was like expected her to hang out with her all the time, expected her to be her best friend. Like, they had met over like Facebook or something. They had just been like, oh yeah, we should, like, I need a roommate, you need a roommate, let's just become roommates. And then this person like expected her to be her best friend, expected them to hang out all the time. When she wasn't home, she was like, where are you? Like, proper like strange behavior. Like
yeah, I get it. Man, yeah, but there's a lot of roommate horror stories. But that's what I said in the first part, is like, you can't be the kind of person who like lets people walk all over you. Like, you need to be able to set boundaries from like the first, like, I meet people and I'm like, okay, like, we're gonna be roommates. Like, I like you, like, that's cool. But like, these are things that I really can't stand. Like, I can't stand like foods.
No.
For instance, I can't stand them. That's my red line. You know what I mean? And the reason I'm saying this is because my current roommate is learning how to play the flute.
Your roommate hearing this is gonna be like, hey.
Now he knows, because like I said, you have to be able to be. Is it recorded?
Yeah.
Okay. You looked freaked out for a second.
Because I accidentally switched the thing, but it's
yeah, but like, that's the thing, is like, he knows that I don't like the way it sounds. I know this because I told him. But like, it's all good. Like, we're still like, it's not a deal breaker for me. It's just a flute, right?
Yeah.
But like, that's my point, is that you need to know, like, these are things that you have to talk about. Like, this is where I can't stand it, because the way it comes out is in like toxic times like this, where you can't tell the roommate because you don't know how to interact with them. You don't know how to be frank with people. And then you go on the tram, you start talking shit, and then some dude just starts laughing with you. You know what I mean? Like, that's how it comes out, and then it'll just get worse and worse and worse like this. And then this is when you get to whole friendships just collapsing.
Yeah, you basically need to be able to talk very frankly to them.
Yeah, that's just what you need to expect. And it's not like everybody is a great person to live with. Like me, yeah. I'm like solid 6.5, 7 out of 10. Like, my issue is that, like, I don't clean very often. You know what I mean? Like, that's my thing. But like, I'm not nasty.
And there's always the option of getting cleaners.
Yeah, that's not all. I mean, we're gonna talk about inflation soon, homie. Because like,
we have to talk
but
about
cleaners definitely are a big help to the problem. But sometimes, like, I'm not nasty, but I've heard of like nasty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone has heard of like some nasty motherfucker.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just someone who just like the common areas will be something, but then like if you ever like
go into their room
and you're like, oof, this is not good.
You live like this.
Yeah. Like, my problem mainly is just clothes. Like, I'll leave my clothes everywhere. Like, I'll do the laundry and I'll move all the dry clothes from the laundry rack to the couch. Like, that's my thing, right? Or like plates. I'll just like leave them in front of where I'm eating, right? I'm not like I'm clean at the toilet. I've heard people that are not. And that's when that's my red line. You know what I mean? Like, something happens there, I'm like,
no.
Get out.
Break roommate right now.
Yeah. That's my thing with roommate. But generally speaking, and I've had times where my roommate became my friend.
You were gonna say I've had great roommates, but then you
No. I was gonna say I've had great friends become roommates with them, and then I've had roommates and then just becoming friends with them. And like, generally speaking, it's just if you just knowing where you draw the line at certain places and where you don't. And this is not just for like roommates. This works for like most people.
Did you like ever experience a problem at least?
Oh yeah.
Where you were like fighting, or not fighting,
but like disagreeing.
Disagreeing.
Yeah. Like I said, you have to be frank. So when one of your roommates is being nasty, you have to like tell them like, hey, bro, mold is growing in the kitchen, homie.
Did you have experience where like they would take your clothes and like?
No.
Yeah.
Who has that happened to?
I don't know. Like, I've heard of that happening to.
I mean, I've lent my roommates
or like
clothes,
crossing their boundaries and taking their makeup, or like.
Nobody's ever stolen my makeup.
Yeah.
I wonder.
Obviously.
All right.
Yeah. So like, as I was saying, right. So when you have like roommates, or if you're gonna like live with someone, one, you have to, because you have to understand that you're not gonna be a perfect person to live with. Like I said, I'm like a solid 6.5, 7. Because like sometimes I'll do shit, but like my roommates, whoever I've like had as roommates, they will come up to me like, Zaeem, please like take out the trash. Like, it's been a while. I'm like, you know what?
I think you also have to like find somebody who doesn't consider that for like. If you're a 6.5, right? Like that 3.5.
Okay, I was being humble.
I know. I'm just saying, using an example. Like that 3.5 is like whatever, like you leave clothes around and stuff.
Yeah.
Like if that really bothers somebody, you should know beforehand. Because for some people, it's like, okay.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, talk to these guys and find out like what's the like red line. Like for me, I was like, guys, I want to get like before I moved in with a few roommates, I was like, I want to get a pet. They're like, dope. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
They were like 100% supportive. But obviously, if someone's got like an allergy, then you have to like, you can't just like move in with someone and be like, and I brought my rabbit. You know what I mean? Like, you need to have these like in advance. But yeah, speaking of pets.
Yeah.
Let's speak of pets.
Tell them about your pets.
So, what on earth possessed you to get a snake?
Homie.
I already know the answer to this, but
that's not how it works. Okay, so we were talking about pets, and like, since I was like 16 and I found out you could have particular snakes as pets, I was like, I want one. But I come from a very normal family. So immediately,
sure.
What do you mean sure, homie? It's sure because after I told my mom I wanted to get a snake, she was like, no. obviously, right? She was like, this is not normal. And ever since then, I was like, okay, I guess I can't do that. And then after I lived in Debrecen for a year, I was like, I could get a pet. And I was like, I wonder if people here like sell pet snakes, because in many like in ePet, I think in Santa Ana, right now you can get a corn snake. Like it's a very small type of like pet snake. And I also got like a pet snake from a breeder in Budapest, right? And before I moved into this apartment, like where I was living with these guys I just met, literally like met like maybe twice before this. I was like, guys, what do you guys think of like if I got a pet snake? And they were like enthusiastic. They're like, homie, let's do it. Let's get one. It'll be dope, right? And one of my roommates came with me to Budapest to pick up our snake, and just he split the cost with me at the time and everything, and it was real nice. Like we were okay with it, and like that was fun. I mean, obviously there was an understanding it was my initiative. I was the one who knew about it, and I was going to be the one doing like most of the like taking care of this stuff. Like it was not like I got a snake and I was like, oh, these guys don't help me. Like I knew that it was my thing, right? Basically, right? But even still, those guys would help out, and still do.
Where do you keep the snake? Like, is it in your room or like?
No. It's not like a dog or a cat. You don't just like leave it like just to like run around. You have like a tank for a snake.
Yeah, obviously.
Your tank is very cool too.
Like, are they okay with having the tank in the living room, or do you have to keep it in your room?
I'll tell you, right? So basically, so my contract says no pets allowed. The one that I have right now, right? And when I was moving houses to the current apartment, I still have my pet snake, right? So I kind of put him in like a storeroom, and I was like, they'll never look there. And I was right. But then one day I was like, I wanted to upgrade to a bigger tank. And I was like, I can't keep like trying to hide this thing. Like it's not going to be...
Also, your snake grows, right? Like
he's adult size now. Yeah. He's not going to grow anymore. That's why I wanted to upgrade. I wanted to get like one more tank and like get like the last one I'm ever going to buy. And then that's what I did. But basically I talked to my landlord. I was like, what do you guys think if I got like a pet, right? And my landlord was very reasonable. He's like, listen, we don't want dogs, cats, anything that can scratch furniture, and anything that has fur. They're like, you can get some fish. I was like, what about a reptile, like a turtle? I already had a snake, but I was telling him like, what do you think of a turtle? And he's like, you know what? Yeah, sure. Like it's not really a problem. I was like, cool. And then I just get the tank, I put it in the living room. And little did I know that the landlord, I don't talk to my landlord directly, I talk to my real estate agent, but I just say landlord for ease, right? I didn't know that he was also like a fan of like reptiles and stuff. So when I told him, I actually ended up getting a snake. Like I remember when he came over to collect some of the rent money, he was like, take him out, I want to see him. Like he was excited as well, right? So that was a very pleasant experience. Nice, yeah. And then when we renewed the contract, he took out the no pets clause. Well, he still has the no pets clause, but he said no pets except for the snake that you already have.
Except for Draco.
Except for Draco the snake, yeah. But yeah, so that was like a really nice experience with the landlord.
That's cute.
I also took care of a cat here. I took care of a friend's cat for I think maybe 4 or 5 months.
I have noticed quite a few people like rescue cats here.
Yeah, rescue cats.
Just keep them.
When they say rescue, what they mean is they take them off the street.
Yeah.
And kidnap them, and then say I rescued this cat or I adopted this cat. What they did was kidnapping. Right? Or catnapping. Kidnapping. Anyways, but yeah, I took care of my friend's cat here for a couple months, and he was like, it's been years since I've even seen him, but I still miss that cat.
Yeah.
But that being said, so the way it works was I lived very close to my friend at the time, and we kept the cat in his house, and he ended up losing some money of his deposit because when he was moving out, the landowner noticed fur and it was like all over the apartment. There was no damage really. Yeah. There was no claw marks or anything. But you see fur, right? And the landlord is like, if I have someone come in here and they have an allergy to fur, obviously it's going to be a big problem for me. I'm going to have to get this place like properly deep cleaned. And so use money on that. So a lot of landlords, like a lot of people will keep cats here and just hide them.
Even though their contracts say no pets?
Yeah, even though their contract says no pets, they'll keep them and things like that. Yeah. So, I mean, what about you guys?
I mean, I know a couple of people with cats. I have noticed that like a lot of them hide those cats for sure.
I have a question. When will you get a turtle?
When will I get a turtle? The problem with me getting a turtle is that I first of all think too much about For context, by the way, for the listeners, I've always wanted a turtle. I think too much about how much expense that's going to be, first of all. And I don't think it's going to be that much expense, but there's also the whole thing of like, you're going to have to leave that pet here.
Oh.
Like I can't take it back to Pakistan every holiday season. And who will take care of it?
Unless you get
And, like,
a passport.
Yeah, I can get a turtle passport, I guess. But even then, like I would be taking like a tank with me, like from here to there.
No, you. Okay.
And I also travel quite a bit.
Okay.
Just generally. So that like holds me back. But
There are
like,
pet hotels
in Debrecen?
in Debrecen and Budapest.
There's pet hotels in Debrecen?
What do you think I do, homie?
Don't you just find somebody to take care of Draco?
Who would do that?
I mean, you have friends who like really like him.
No. What I do is like from the guy I bought my snake from in Budapest, I'll leave him with him over the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll charge me maybe 10-15K for the whole like summer.
And they take care of
Yeah. He just takes care of it. And there's a lot of people do that with like other pets too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Aine, have you ever wanted a pet?
I always wanted a cat.
Mm-hmm.
I would love getting a cat here. I feel like I'll be so happy and I'll be like a cute little friend in the house.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
like I always get scared of the no pets allowed in the apartment
Oh,
clause.
okay.
So yeah. I've thought about getting one and hiding it, but like I don't think I'll be able to do that very well because of the fur.
There are
And because
pet-friendly
of my
apartments.
landlord, I feel like she'd actually kill me.
Oh yeah. I mean, there are pet-friendly apartments. Like if you really want a pet like that,
You should definitely look for a pet.
you can get a pet-friendly apartment. But like people generally speaking decide like what's the worst that could happen, and then move into a nice apartment, and then just get a pet anyways.
Yeah, but I know a lot of people who are here who like not a lot of people, but I know like 2 people who own dogs who had to get those like pet like friendly apartments because you cannot hide a dog. Dude.
Yeah,
Like,
you can't hide a dog. No.
that dog is gonna be barking, gonna be making a mess.
I'd love to get a dog.
I would love to get a dog here, but as like I don't know, my schedule really like 4th year, like 5th year, like 3rd year. There's just so many freaking classes.
My friend recently has like a tank it's like a proper bioactive tank. Like he's got like plants growing in it with like shrimp and snails and fish, and it looks so cool.
Wow.
It's the coolest thing, dude. Like I remember seeing that thing, and I was like, I want one, dude.
Yeah,
it's so cool, and it's like the aquarium is basically set up in a way that it can take care of itself.
Amazing.
So it's best.
Wow. Like that's why you like if you have like a really busy schedule, I think that like reptiles or fish are the way to go.
Yeah, basically.
Even cats are not so bad then.
Yeah,
they can kind of like
they
be left at home.
Like you don't have to go and walk them.
Yeah, I would feel really bad leaving your dog at home.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously people still do that. So I mean, it depends on the dog you get, and 2, it depends on how you train the dog. But yeah, I mean, it is possible.
One of the biggest like challenges when it comes to finding an apartment these days is that ever since we moved here, things have gotten so much more expensive than they used to be.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I first moved here, the average apartment range, like especially like if you had roommates as well, it was like somewhere between like you could find a place for as low as 70K and as high as 200K.
I remember when I came here and €1 was 300 forints and not like 400 forints.
Yeah.
It was a huge deal back then.
And now in your wildest dreams, you could not find anything under 100K, I think.
This is a big problem.
Under
Not just
150.
Under 150 even.
This is a big problem for me, right? Because like for every apartment that I've gotten in Debrecen, like it's come with its own challenges, and cost is definitely like a big one. For example, we had COVID, right? And the way it works is first when we came here about 2020, right? And that's what we knew. It was like €1, 300 forints, a 1-bedroom apartment. A cheap one could run you maybe 120, maybe 130,000 forints a month, right? And now it's like that would be a dream to find something like that, right? And what happened was when we came here, I think about 6 months to a year after we came here in 2020, COVID hit. And because of that, none of the landowners could really increase their rent that much. Yeah. And then after COVID was over, all of them decided to make up for like 4 or 5 accumulated years of not really increasing their rent. Yeah. And then there was this 1 year where everything was so much more expensive than you could
There's
imagine.
Also like a lot to be said politically there, like with the Russia-Ukraine war, with the European Union.
With
like,
the gas prices.
Prices and things like that. But yeah, like the overall outcome was that all of this inflation accumulated and then immediately like hit us.
And it hit us the hardest, right? I mean, there's also a thing with international students being charged more for rent because it is sort of assumed that we
If
can
they
pay.
afford it, yeah.
And
But I think that like the inflation has hit everybody just equally like horribly because
I think
things
it's
have
hit everyone horribly. I don't know about equally.
gotten- really.
Yeah, I don't know about equally, dude.
But like for example, like going to the store and realizing that eggs, like 6 eggs, used to be for like 300 forints, and suddenly in the middle they became for like 700 forints. Like that was such a horrible experience.
In
I didn't
general,
know
like
this.
the grocery shopping became such a horrible experience in my
Yeah,
opinion because I
dude.
used to buy so many things. Like my cart would be filled,
Mhm.
and I would like pay maybe like 15K for it.
Yeah, but now you
I
take
can-
like a
6 things
Yeah.
for like 10K or something, and I
Yeah.
just can't believe it.
Yeah. But there is definitely like a lot of the new places that are being built specifically to cater to international students are driving up the prices as well. Like it's just like the average. I think you're kind of expected as an international student to have an apartment that's somewhere between 160 and like 260,
Yeah, now maybe even 300.
Yeah.
300 for like the really nice places as a
or like the ones that you split with somebody.
exactly right. And that's just like regular prices for apartments, and then it comes to like the different qualities of apartments, right?
Yeah, that's
Like I can't live without air conditioner. Like I need AC,
yeah.
and because of that, I end up having to go for more expensive places because they'll charge more for AC and like a bedroom or how many ACs there are. Location matters a lot. Like I live near the Spar building, which is a great location. Further away from uni, you usually get cheaper,
Yeah.
and less amenities, less things like air conditioners, stuff like that. You pay less for, and generally that's how it works. But like now, everything is just going higher in price.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I was looking for an apartment this summer.
Yeah.
Like the places near uni, like let's say, what was the street called?
Doxy,
Dottie Joseph, or like Martin Falvey, or like Kumlushi.
or even Doxy Park.
Yeah, or Dottie Park. Yeah, they became so expensive, and like I would say the quality of the apartment would be like, I wouldn't say it would be
Mid.
like, yeah, it would be like really mid. It's not like the best form of apartments. And
But
it would
it's,
be
like,
like
livable.
yeah, it would be like 250K. I'm
It's
not even
insane.
joking. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
It doesn't deserve this much.
Mm-hmm.
It just.
But then
because
I
of
felt
location.
that way generally about any apartments that I saw near university. I always felt like they were a little bit inflated for their value just because they were in like near
Close to
university.
uni,
Yeah.
exactly.
Which is understandable. That is a factor that can add like.
And that's
value
what
to an
happens to a lot of students. Like they come
apartment.
because like I said, when I first came here, I picked the apartment because I could see the university building.
Yeah.
I was like, straight line, don't get lost. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And that's how it works for the closer you are to uni, the more you pay. And then I think the longer people live here, the more they're like once they get the city, they're like, we can move further away.
Yeah.
And then the most extreme form of that is the dorms, right?
Mhm.
You can get a dorm, like you can live on campus basically. You pay a lot of money
Mm-hmm.
for.
But they provided everything, even Wi-Fi. Like.
Well, they provide you with a lot of things. They overcharge you for all of those things. Like even if you got like a 1-bedroom apartment and you decided to do everything yourself, it'd still be cheaper than living in a dorm.
Really?
Yeah. And then you have to deal with dorm things.
I feel like I feel like last time I checked, like Augusta was a little bit less expensive, but
Augusta sucks.
yeah, you have like you're just a room, right? You don't have like an whole apartment.
No
or
AC.
something. So like yeah, and no AC.
This one time I sat on a
No
toilet in
shataf.
Augusta and the whole damn toilet seat slid off. Like no shut off, no nothing. Yeah, that's another thing for a lot of students who come here from the UAE. International students who are used to having a shataf or just general hygiene products. You have to ask for those for your
Yeah.
like. I remember this 1 year. I could I asked my owner for it, and they're like, "Yeah, it wouldn't work." So what I actually had to do was I got these moist towelettes like you get at Spar, and use those, right?
Mhm.
And they work, but I like having a shataf.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's
Yeah.
also these like squeeze, like a bottle that looks like the dentist equipment, and then you just squeeze.
That sounds so weird.
That sounds
That's
really
so
weird.
But like it was like a life-saving technique.
Yeah.
In case you didn't have an landlord that agreed to put the shataf on.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but like just generally, like dorm experiences are like I feel like anybody who lives in a dorm for an extended period of time just learns to live with the
With what they have.
Unfortunateness.
With the minimum, yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's a lot of people. Like, if you like get a place and you're like mostly okay with it, you just learn to live with the bad stuff, right?
Yeah.
But for me, like I like to I've lived in a bunch of different places, so I was like, okay, this place has this really nice, feature. But if I ever move again, I want to make sure I don't have this other feature. I want to make sure I know a landlord better.
Yeah.
Things like that, basically, right?
Yeah. Like for me, this oven doesn't work, so I have to get like an actual oven for myself. And I'm like, the next time I'm gonna move somewhere, but I don't have to keep getting appliances.
Next time you're gonna, homie, you have lived here for years. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah, and when they increased my rent last time, I asked them to put me on a multi-year contract because I was like, I can't risk this happening.
Yeah, that was very smart of you.
Yeah,
I was thinking I'll do that in 5 minutes.
Yeah. By the way, this is something you should do if your landlord increases the rent and you want to keep staying in your apartment. Like, please ask them to say like 2-year or 3-year contract because that actually is so much better.
Because with 1-year contracts, the trouble is that first of all, it's beneficial for the landowner because they also like it when you have multi-year contracts because they can be sure there's going to be a tenant in the apartment.
Yeah.
And the other problem is that they won't increase your rent every single time you renew the contract, right? And that's a big issue. And we were talking about pets earlier, right? You can get one thing I noticed with pet-friendly apartments, they don't necessarily have to be the nicest apartments, right? Because there's so few of them that anybody who wants them will deal with how shit the apartment is just so they can have their cat or dog or fish or whatever, right? And so they don't have to be the nicest ones. They can also be further from uni. Like just to make up for things that they don't have, like they might not be close to uni, they might not have the nicest stuff. They'll say, you can have a cat or a dog.
Yeah.
And they can make up for it that.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? And, essentially it just comes down to if you can be okay with these things or not. Right? But yeah, inflation is hitting pretty hard. I mean, it hit really hard last year. I think last year was the worst.
Last year was the worst for sure. And that's when I noticed like a lot of people moving into like much further away from university, like further than Kushitskare and stuff. Because those places are actually
about getting roommates.
Yeah.
Roommates moving further than city center.
But I noticed that a lot of people who move further than city center really like their apartment. Because it's kind of nice out there.
City center is a nice place. I mean, one more thing is that there's also like apartment complexes. Like there's Doxy Park, and there's the 2 new university student buildings.
There's the one in Bentaire.
Is there one in Bentaire?
Yeah, like there's this.
Super Ben Park. Ben Park.
There's also one at like above, the Korean restaurant Charm.
Oh yeah, the Parachute Bar, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, there's another reason other than inflation that those prices are going up. I heard it's because there's a lot of companies setting up factories here.
The BMW group.
The BMW group, right?
They took over our apartments. I remember.
So I'll just explain real quick. And what happened is for example, BMW is setting up a factory here, so they will buy up a lot of apartments in the area, and they'll buy them for whatever cost, right? Because they're not really concerned about that, but they need to get their employees a place to stay. So when they call people over, they say, well, we know you're coming to Debrecen.
Yeah.
But we'll give you accommodation, all these things, right? And because of that, now that landlords know that they can charge a bit more money because BMW will buy it, who knows if students will be able to afford it. But again, they also think the students will just cope, right? International students.
And the students do cope. They get like 5 roommates and stuff.
Yeah, we don't have a choice but to cope, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, but from what I've heard, living in Debrecen is still not as bad, like cost of living wise, as like another big city, like London or some place like that.
Of course, no, like compared to other university towns and cities, like
it's still not bad, but it's getting worse.
It's getting
it's bad.
Yep.
So in our last segment, we want to ask you what you wish you had known before coming to Debrecen.
What I wish I knew. I mean, I wish I knew that, like, my main thing is, first of all, like, with uni, like, making sure that I had, like, talked to seniors and known, like, where to concentrate really hard on my studies, where not to. Because I came here my first semester, I was like, everything's going to be so easy. And then I was slapped by anatomy.
Yeah.
Right? So I wish I mean, that's, like, the academic side. I wish I had someone to, like, tell me, like, don't mess around here. And then with like living here, I wish I knew that it's okay to negotiate with landowners, like in terms of rent, but obviously don't overdo it. But make sure you have the ability to negotiate and make sure you can talk to roommates and general things like this, like things that you pick up generally when you live here. Most people who've been here for at least a couple of years now know. So if someone just gave me a heads up, like, don't be intimidated of your landlord, threaten them with a tax office if you pay in cash.
If you pay in cash, you can be like, I know that there's a tax office in Debrecen.
And you're not paying properly.
Yeah.
Things like that, generally speaking. You know what I mean? And yeah, that's what I wish I knew.
Mm-hmm. And another question is, what would you like us to talk about on this podcast? Like, is there anything that you want us to cover?
What do I want you to cover? Cover the anatomy department.
Oh yeah, we definitely will, I think.
Have a whole episode disparaging certain members of the anatomy department.
I don't know if we'll have that.
Name them.
Name them? Okay.
We would, but we don't want to be like sued.
Guys, this is not a university affiliated podcast, by the way. All views are our own.
You don't even know if we're all going to Debrecen University.
Okay.
I go to Szeged. No, I don't.
Yeah, I go to Szeged University. I don't even go here. But yeah, okay, thank you for that. And then the last question is, what was the last question?
I don't know, homie. This is your podcast.
I don't know.
Oh, do you have any questions for us?
No?
Okay.
Actually, my question is, nah. I mean, okay, I'll ask something like, what made you guys decide just casually we're going to start doing a podcast?
So the actual origin of this podcast is a running joke that I had with Mustafa. Because Mustafa has a car and he drives to and from class sometimes. And sometimes, like, if we're going from one class to another, he'll offer us a ride. And a lot of the times when when I was sitting in the front seat of his car, I would like start a conversation with him, and Honey would be in the back seat, and we would be like, the things that we talked about, I felt like were always so interesting. Whenever we got out, I was like, I feel like we just had just like a wonderful podcast episode just now. And then every time I sat in his car, I was like, welcome to the podcast. And then we would always talk about something super interesting.
I swear to God, everybody thinks like this now.
I imagine.
You hang out with your boys for 2 hours, you're like, guys, let's start a podcast. You know what I mean? Me and my friends have thought about it. I'm pretty sure anyone who has one good conversation at some point thinks like, you know what? Yeah. I could be a podcaster. Yeah, I could be Joe Rogan. It's not that hard.
Yeah, we're just being Joe Rogan.
It's also like a forever memory kind of thing. Like that's you can always listen back to it and be like, damn, this is how I thought back then.
Yeah, you mean like Facebook, like when it reminds you like 10 years ago, this is what you posted, you're like, oh my God, this is so crazy.
Like 5-6 years from now, Haneen and I are going to listen to this and be like, okay, those are the problems that we had when we were like that age. Like you genuinely forget about this kind of thing.
Yeah, maybe we have some certain views now. In the future,
we might change our minds.
Yeah, we'll completely change it and be like, wow.
But basically, like this running joke went on for a lot of third year. And so when we came into fourth year, and like one of the times that we were sitting in Mustafa's car, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm going to start a podcast. And I texted Haneen. I was like, I'm doing it. And then Haneen was like helping me make the outline.
You didn't even ask Mustafa.
He has a lot on his plate already. If you listen, and just a plug, listen to episode 2 for more about what Mustafa is always so occupied with. He has a lot of stuff to do. So go check out episode 2. Thank you. You too, Zaeem. Go check out episode 2.
Oh yeah, I guess I should listen to the podcast as well. Because I don't do
You just said yes without listening to the podcast? Okay. So
I fully did not expect the podcast to happen. Just a side note, Zoya's like, hey,
you want to be on my podcast?
You want to be on the podcast? I was like, sure. I was like, surely we're going to forget about this in a week. And then she was like, wait, come on this day. I was like, what? We're doing.
I actually think that Haneen, props to you, by the way. You are my queen. You really because once I told you, you were like, okay, I'm making a poster. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And then we immediately met for coffee that day.
Yeah.
And we were already very deep into an outline and stuff.
Did either of you ever think to yourselves like, oh, I kind of don't want to do this anymore, but this other person's really invested?
Many times, mostly because but I feel
because she made a whole outline, and then I made the poster, and we're like, oh my God, we're way too deep into this. We have to do something.
There is something very intimidating about putting yourself out on the internet this way.
Right? Yeah, and we're super introverts, by the way.
Well, yeah, and both of us had a lot of doubts about it, and we still do. I still think oh my God, I'm saying too much on the internet. But I'm glad to have Haneen as my.
I feel like if it wasn't for Zoya, I wouldn't have
yeah. Same. If it wasn't for Haneen, I wouldn't have done this at all. I wouldn't have gone so far.
That's crazy.
Yeah, dream team.
Yay!
We fist bumped for everyone listening.
My God.
Teamwork makes the dream work, Zaeem.
That's true.
He has
Fair enough, bro.
Very funny look on his face right now. All right, thank you so much for tuning in. Please listen to our podcast on
YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. That will never stop being cool.
Yeah, and follow us on Instagram for further updates. We're going to post a little bit of a poll before our next episode to determine what exactly people want to hear.
And how you would want the style of the podcast to change.
Yeah.
And guests.
Yeah, and we will
posts.
Put up a post just after this about Zaeem is going to be our guest for the next episode. Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Oh, no, sorry, that's what you're supposed to say. Thank you for having me. Okay.